and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Hey everybody, this is Connor Shank, and today you're listening to the Constant Sports Podcast, the podcast that is committed to connecting you with other sports professionals because they say it's all about who you know, and today, Jordan Thomas. Thanks for joining us today, Jordan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And, you were a very highly esteemed guest, sought after guest. So we thought we'd get you on the podcast today and get you connected with, our listeners and viewers, and hopefully we can get you connected as well. So just a little background on Jordan here. Jordan is the manager of business development with the Dallas Wings and Panther City Lacrosse. And in this episode, we're going to talk from everything with sports business, college athletics, graduate school, coaching, being a supervisor, all that type of stuff. So we're excited to get started today. And I guess, Jordan, just to start off, maybe give the viewers and listeners kind of a quickish, backstory about who you are, kind of how you got to where you are. I know that's a mouthful and a lot to talk about, but, kind of the Reader's Digest, and we'll dig a little deeper as we get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, thanks for having me, Connor. My background in sports is it's been everywhere, man. It's meandered through all these different avenues. Baseball has definitely been a catalyst for me. And it's been that way all my life, really. Baseball has been a part of my life since I can remember. And it's kind of one of those sports that I say it chose me. And it's given so much to me. And so, now I'm in a position where I can kind of give back to the game. I'm not in baseball as we currently speak, but I'm in the sports world. So been in the sports world for at least the last 8 to 9 years. And that started while I was finishing up my degree at Bethune-Cookman University, an HBCU in Daytona Beach, Florida. And so, Major League Baseball, NBA G League, now the WNBA and National Lacrosse League. It's a lot. So I'll try not to, I think probably the questions will probably bring out a lot more in terms of the background. So let's dive into that.
Let's do it. So I guess to start, you mentioned a little bit you were a college baseball athlete and you chose college. Is that kind of how you got to Bethune-Cookman there? Was baseball, or is that was it the school first, then baseball, or how'd you get down that path?
Oh man, it's a great kind of like story, and I wish that I could tell this story more often. But I went to high school on Southern University's campus, another HBCU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I basically grew up on Southern's campus, and I'd known the head baseball coach there, Roger Kadar, who played in the big leagues. He's well known. He's probably in the Coaches Hall of Fame, but he was a great family friend to us, and I've probably known him since I was about 7 years old. And I remember they were playing Bethune on ESPN. This was the Urban Youth Classic back in Compton, and Coach Kadar told me, he was like, "Hey, tune in. We're going to be on ESPN." And so I tuned in and I watched Bethune. At the time, they were beating up on Southern bad. And so I asked my mom, I said, who is the school? Where is the school? And I was just really inquisitive. I was in 8th grade at the time. And she was like, "Oh, it's an HBCU out in Florida." And so I just kind of always had them on my radar. And then when it came time for me to go through the recruiting process myself, I always kind of kept them in mind because they had a lot of the things that I was looking for in college,
right?
In the college that I chose. And so, one of the big things was that I wanted to get a degree that, I felt was transferable, that I could use, in which I graduated with my bachelor's in business administration, and also minored in mass communications. I probably should put that to use now. But yeah, I wanted to have a really reputable degree. I wanted to play baseball at a high level.
Yep.
At the time, they were winning conference, the MEAC conference every year, and going to a regional. The fact that it was in the state of Florida and on the beach was even more attractive.
That'll do. Yeah, that'll do.
And then, the fact that it was an HBCU was huge for me,
Mhm.
because that was a culture that I was familiar with and that I wanted to experience. Everyone in my family had attended an HBCU. My dad went to Texas Southern. My mother, my grandparents, godparents, brother went to Southern. Um, and my grandfather on my dad's side played for Coach Eddie Robinson at Grambling State University.
Okay, okay.
So um, I knew that this was the route that I wanted to go, man, and that's kind of how I chose, and it was the best 4 years of my life.
Mhm. Well, that's awesome. Love to hear that story there. And you mentioned at the end that's how that's kind of the route you chose and went down. So you went down that road, baseball, and then is that kind of what propelled you? You're like, okay, I like the sports industry. Is that kind of what propelled you into the sports, I guess, as a career rather than going, finance or business for a different sector?
Yeah, well, I always knew that I was going to play the game for a while, but I knew also outside of that I'm so much more than just an athlete, and
Mhm.
always have been. And so when it came time, I mean, I just used what I had, and that was, one of the things that's always propelled me, whether it was in baseball or anything else in life, is the fact that I've never met a stranger. I can connect with just about anybody. And I think my life experiences, I'm grateful that I had a mother who pushed me to go and try things,
Yep.
to not be scared, to not be afraid to go away for school. I was away 10 and a half, 11 hours, and that's driving
Mhm.
from home in Louisiana. And I may have gotten homesick like one time, and that was pretty early on, but you know, I knew for me, my aspirations were going to be long term. I love to see people grow, and
Yep.
that's what helped me get into the coaching space. My brother's a great coach. He coached me growing up, you know. So I saw that. Not only that, I'm a fifth generation educator. So when I talk about how my path has been everywhere but straight, I was in education for a while as a teacher.
Right.
Um, so that's something that's in me that I can always tap into, and I did. And so um, I just knew that opportunities were endless, and the more that I put myself out there, the more those opportunities would be available to me.
Yep. No, I'm with you. And then I guess as far as the travel and you're saying getting homesick, you ended up at Temple, getting your at the School of Sport and Tourism Hospitality. I think that's the full name of it. I can't remember. It's
Y-
something very
y-
similar to that.
Yeah.
But it's a mouthful. So you ended up out there at the University of Temple. So how'd you get out there, and what made you choose that program?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a journey in itself too. When I was playing, I think this was after my last season of professional baseball, I got back home in Florida, to my place in Florida, and I didn't really have a sense of direction. In
Mhm.
the off season, I coached. Um, I had a travel team that I coached, and I worked at a baseball academy, and that was a way for me to stay in shape, stay involved in the game, just reinforce my love and passion for the game.
Mhm.
And so I kept thinking about it. I was like, well, what else is there? Like I want to be a part of the game for a long time. What else can
Right.
I do? My god sister was at Chapel Hill, and she was in their sports administration program, their
Mhm.
master's program. And I talked to her, and she was like, "Hey, we actually have a career uh, in sports weekend. You should come up, check it out. It's like an open house."
Yep.
So I did that. Went up there, had a great time at Chapel Hill, and I thought that was the place for me. But just having great people in my life, like mentors at the time, they were like, well, I know you love, the idea of being at Chapel Hill because it's fully funded,
Mhm.
but you should explore some other options as well. And so I did my research and I found Temple. Temple was in Philadelphia, had never been to Philadelphia at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and the more research I did, the more I connected with individuals there like Jim Alton, um, Amy Giddings. Uh, it just became apparent like, okay, I need to see what this opportunity may have for me.
Mhm.
Could this be, the next step that I take? And so I took a trip up there. They had a career in sports night, and I met, a lot of my future professors, advisors like Jim. And before I met them, I got a chance to get to know the city of Philadelphia.
Mm.
And I think that that's so crucial for anyone who's looking to go into a graduate school. Graduate school is going to count for a large part of your time, but at the same time, you need to have something to do on your downtime
Yeah.
to be able to get away and not feel inundated by all this information that you're receiving, right?
Mhm.
And so I had a blast. I stayed downtown. I walked the city, took the subway, um, and I just got to know the city, and I loved it. It made me feel like I was um, in a northern New Orleans, essentially.
Yeah.
So, I came from that trip, and I was just like, yeah, this is where I want to go. I'm
This
not
is it.
applying anywhere else. I didn't apply anywhere else. I only applied to Temple, and I got in, and that was the culture that I felt. The big thing about going to Temple was the fact that you got five major sports
Yeah.
organizations, and probably more now that I think about it. But um, having that, but then also you got at least six major universities there.
Mhm.
So being in the field of sports administration, sports business, there were so many opportunities. I was like, this is a no-brainer. Um, and I think, I'm grateful for that opportunity. I'm grateful for that experience that I had going there because it was unmatched. And it allowed me to have the experiences that I'm having now.
Right. And to dive into the experiences kind of you're having now. So what was it like? We have a lot of listeners that are either in the transition phase from, into graduate school and then during and then now they're graduating, right? So what was the transition like after you graduated from Temple and then, getting your next job? Kind of how did that go? Was it a lot of cold calls, emails? Was it a referral? Like what was that process like?
Oh man, I mean, I have to I have to talk about my experience with Texas Rangers as a
Mhm.
Charlie Pride Fellow. Um, and that came about. I mean, I think the sports industry is all about relationships.
Right.
It is 100% about relationships because that's how I've gotten all the positions that I've gotten.
Mhm.
Now, mind you, I did a damn good job everywhere that I've been.
Right.
Um,
You got to
and
do your part.
you're right, right. You do have to do your part, and I think that's what's made um, my industry experience in sports so special. I've been a part of some really cool projects,
Mhm.
and to go back to the Texas Rangers, that started just by a relationship um, that I hadn't even met this individual. It was an individual I saw last night. We're in the middle of the WNBA season here with the
Mhm.
Wings, and um, an individual named Larry Lundy. Um, and I think about it, it wasn't a sports organization that I met him through. It was a men's fellowship organization.
Mm.
And so we connected, and uh, he sent me the Charlie Pride Fellowship application. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, this would be a great opportunity. They made an exception for me I was a graduate student. It was really for juniors and seniors, upcoming
Mhm.
juniors and seniors. But I mean, I probably wrote one of the best, um, one of the best letters that I could write in terms of why I wanted to be a Charlie Pride Fellow. I
Mhm.
mean, I sat there and I poured everything I could into it.
Yeah.
And, fast forward into that experience, I had a chance to work in baseball operations, which I had experience in.
Mhm.
And that was scouting from the professional and amateur level, as well as, um, the analytical side. I didn't really have the analytical experience, um, in which I learned I actually did, but it was more of like the coding, more
Mhm.
of the SQL, the Python, that background that I was able to gain some experience in. Um, but then also business partnerships. And that's what spoke to me. And that's why I've chosen this side of the industry now, being in revenue, is because of my experience there. Um, I mean, that front office, those individuals, they opened up the door for me to be able to experience, okay, I know I've never met a stranger in my life. I can make a lot of money from this, um, but I can also create meaningful experiences, meaningful partnerships, tell stories that people don't know about, because
Mhm.
we always see brands, we see their marketing, we see their sponsorship, their logos, but we don't know the story a lot of times behind it. And that's what makes that space special to me. And so I got a chance to work in that department and then marketing as well. So they kind of worked hand in hand. Um, and so just going back to, you know, how I've gotten to this point, it started there.
Yeah.
And so I just maximized that experience and getting the chance to meet the new Pride Fellows now that I'm back in Texas
Yeah.
last week is special because I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that was 2 years ago, and it went like
Flies
that,
by.
right?
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, I know this is long-winded. When I graduated, the Philadelphia Phillies were an organization that I really wanted to work for, mostly because I love the city of Philadelphia. And I'd also done some really great work for them as well. And so it just so happened at the time they were looking to go in a different direction. And it was nothing against me. It was just
Hmm.
that's where they were headed. And so I stayed in contact with the person that I connected with who ended up being the chief operating officer. I'm sorry, the chief revenue officer here with the Wings. And
Mm.
right when he was getting ready to take this job, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you still interested, in being in revenue?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I'm still interested." And this was a couple weeks before graduation. He's like, "Well, I'm thinking about taking this job, um, and I want you to be my first hire." And so, one, I felt honored,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I felt like, "Yeah, you're damn right. I'm supposed to be your first
Yeah.
hire."
Yeah. You got the
you
right
know,
guy.
right? You got the right guy, but just continuing to establish that relationship. We stayed in contact. And right after graduation, it was kind of a long process. He was like, "Hey, look, I got the job. I need to do some things, move some things around,
Hmm.
understand the culture a little bit better." Um, and so once I knew that this was where I was going to go, I had the rest of that summer to prepare for it. But yeah, there was a lot of cold calling. There was a lot of reaching out to my network. There was a lot of leaning on friends, mentors, people that I trusted, and I could tell you, I mean, it's a learning experience.
Right.
You're not going to get it right. I've been fortunate enough to already have what I think, I've lived a couple of lives already. And
Hmm.
so for someone who is looking to get into this industry and they're a new graduate, give yourself grace, be patient with yourself, and really and truly know, like, if you get an opportunity, is this opportunity going to propel me forward? Is this what I
Yeah.
really want? Because this industry is not for the faint of heart. You In this industry, the people who make the most money are the brands and the people who lead the organization.
Hmm.
So if you're okay with not making a ton of money at the beginning of your career, then yeah, go for it. But if that's something that you really high on, be mindful that you might not
Right.
make that kind of money.
Yep.
We all
Yep.
have this idea, right? So um, I know that's long winded, but that's kind of how it went for me after graduation.
Hmm. No, yeah, that was a lot of good gold nuggets in there, and I just wanted to kind of parlay this into the next question here. So you mentioned you kind of each step your job or each step you take, you're maximizing the opportunity at hand, still connecting with those individuals and building relationships. And as you mentioned, that's how you got over there to the Dallas Wings. So kind of give our viewers and listeners here a little bit of insight, of how a typical day goes at the Wings or Panther City Lacrosse, and kind of maybe talk about how those are connected, I guess, or work hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was something on its own that I had to learn. I mean, even before I took the job, I had to do my own research, understanding what the NLL was.
Hmm.
It's besides the sport of pickleball, lacrosse is the fastest growing sport in America,
Hmm.
and it's not native to Texas. It's more of a Northeast Canadian sport, right? So I had to learn, about that. But I watched last year's finals with Buffalo and Colorado on YouTube.
Yep.
Atmosphere was crazy. It was insane, and Buffalo just won this last week. But I had to learn about the industries themselves. What attracted me, excuse me, to this opportunity was the fact that these are both growing leagues and sports.
Mhm.
Um, the WNBA is, the fastest growing sport right now on a professional level.
Yep.
in terms of viewership, in terms of engagement. And so that was something that stood out to me. It was like, wow, I could be a part of something really cool. And not only that, I'll be able to learn more about the business on all levels by being, in both leagues,
Right.
which I have. And so, a typical day to day, there are a lot of cold calls, especially being in revenue.
Mhm.
It's reaching out to people. As I mentioned, lacrosse is not a native sport to Texas, so there's an education piece to it where I'm educating, people in the community about what lacrosse is, what is box lacrosse, right?
How it works, all that.
Right, how it works, how it's different than being in the outdoor game, and um, this is a sport that I wish I played growing up. My brother and I, we talk about that all the time. We're like, man, we should have played lacrosse when
Yeah.
we were kids, right? So a typical day is it's growing the brand. That's what I'm charged with doing. I'm in charge of bringing people out, whether that's through smaller partnerships, through corporate outings. I like to start my day. If I have emails and whatnot, I'm not a coffee guy, so the first thing I'm gonna do is get some tea,
Okay.
um, and I'll probably finish if I have like light breakfast or something. But then I get into my emails, make sure that I'm not missing anything,
Mm.
and then you have those time periods where it's better to call people.
Mhm.
Um, I'm someone who likes to talk things through. If I send an email, it's like it's got everything in it, or it's got a little tidbit like, "Hey, this is what we're going to talk about," but we're going to hop on the phone.
Yep.
And so, for I give myself about a 2.5 hour window before lunch to just bang out calls like who's on my list today, who did I have a follow up with, and we use systems like Salesforce, which are great in
Yep.
terms of helping you to create, set up your day.
Mhm.
So I'll set up follow ups through that, but man, we're all hands on deck. It's a smaller organization, so sometimes you're going to wear multiple hats. But I think that's the beautiful thing about it, and especially where I'm looking ahead in my career from a long term perspective, is I wanted to be able to have experience doing a plethora of different things instead
Yeah.
of just my job.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's going to be anywhere in sports. That's how you're going to be able to move up is by being able to do multiple things. If you're a one trick pony, there's not a whole lot of benefit to you or for you to the organization.
Right. No, I'm with you. And I think that's a lot of the times when I'm in either like networking events or different, sports industry things. It's just like when you're first kind of in your career, just wear as many hats as possible, learn as many skills, work for a team, kind of like yourself. It's like box lacrosse. Like people probably even listen to this podcast, don't even know what box lacrosse is. And it's like there's all these sports businesses and teams that exist that, people aren't really familiar. So the sports industry is just so vast and ripe with opportunities, and they're out there, but if you're willing to wear 13 hats, then, it's there for you. But, if you just want to sit in the cubicle for 9 to 5 and kind of just hang out and do your thing, then, the sports industry might not be for you.
It's
You know,
not. It's not.
yeah,
But I mean, you can do it. You
yeah,
definitely could. Will you enjoy it, and will you reap the benefits of it?
mhm,
Uh, I mean, I don't necessarily see it.
right,
Uh,
yeah. No, and that's kind of what I was, going to ask you next. What's kind of your schedule at 9 to 5? Then you got the games, obviously, usually in the evenings, on the weekends. So did your schedule kind of in season revolve around, I guess, the team schedule, or is it, you work your day, like your day job, and then you go to the game at night?
yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think this week is a great example of what you're asking me. Like today, we started at 10.
Mhm.
We had a game last night. Brittany Griner, Phoenix Mercury came to town. So um, even yesterday. So on game days, we start at 10. Um, the days after game days, we start at 10. And, for game days, if we're starting at 10, that means that we're in the office till about 3:30. And then report times typically like 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
So, they're pretty flexible. As long as you're able to, get your stuff done. Like if some people need to go home and like let their dog out before the game and or grab a bite to eat. For me, we have a gym at the office, so I'm either at the gym and then going getting something to eat before the game, just because I need to still like, for me, it's like preparing as if I'm playing, right?
Yep. Yep.
I try to take that same mindset because I feel better. And I mean, frankly, like I also still want to look good. And if
Yeah.
there's an opportunity for me to still move around, like I need to be able to do that.
Mhm.
So that's a typical day. And then during the game, you're there from 4 until maybe last night. We probably didn't leave the arena till about 10 o'clock. But during the game, I'm meeting with clients, I'm meeting with prospects. Um, we're in the hospitality area. We have
Mhm.
suites that we're engaging, some of our sponsors or some of our corporate clients, whoever it may be. But you're always moving around. Sometimes buyers will come up. You got to be
Yeah.
able to put those out. You
Yeah.
know, not everybody's going to come and have a great time, and that's just the reality of it because we're human. But I think what I've learned is that you take some empathy, you take some compassion, and if you mess up, you mess up. Like, but you can only mess up if you're trying,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think when people realize that, at the end of the day, is if you're just treating people right, everything is going to work out, and I
Mhm.
think that's why we're successful right now. I mean,
Right.
I'm a part of the first sellout crowd in franchise history,
There we go.
and so that's something special that we're hanging our hat on and getting ready for tomorrow night.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that was kind of leading me into my next question, but that might be the answer. What's kind of your one of your guys' proudest moments, biggest accomplishments, kind of in the sports industry? I guess we'll go post graduation from Temple.
Oh, yeah, post graduation from Temple. I mean, well, graduation was special for me.
Hmm.
A lot of my family and friends came up and they were a part of that because and that was special for me because I needed those individuals. That was my
Right.
support system.
Hmm.
Um, Majority of my friends are family to me, and it's a very small circle. Kind of what we were talking about
Yeah.
before
The
we
middle
got
name.
started. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, but in terms of my proudest moment or something that I'm really I would say that, yeah, being a part of the sellout crowd. I would say that the other thing is that I've really leaned into my craft as a seller.
Mm.
Um, I've gone through the trenches because, early on selling lacrosse, it was tough, man. It was a
Right.
challenge, especially getting people to see the value in coming out. Like this is a professional sports team. We play in a beautiful arena, um, but going through those bumps and bruises, like I mean, it's refined my selling process to where I can have a conversation with someone and I can say, hey, look, this is what the value is. Not only can I tell you about the value, but I can show you too.
Mhm.
Um, so, that's what I'm really proud of. I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to network with individuals like yourself, and continue to, uh, collaborate with other industry professionals to find best practices because we don't know everything. I don't know everything, but the only way that you are going to know something is by asking.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that you'll find in this industry is that if you ask enough people or you ask someone, um, they should be able to tell you. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
No, yeah, I'm with you there. And I love the kind of the selling aspect and building your sales skills. So maybe off the top of your head, or if you have one in mind, what's kind of your favorite, I guess, either selling book or book on selling that you've read or you're currently reading that our viewers should take a look at?
I, whew, well, it's crazy. I should say selling is a weight game, but I'm gonna be completely honest. I haven't read all of that book. um, but in terms of selling, I think I've been really good at selling myself. So I can't pinpoint a certain book, right?
Mhm.
Um, but I can tell you that things that I was on the fence about, it's someone that I bought the person.
Mm.
I didn't necessarily just buy the product. It
Right.
was the engagement. I mentioned pickleball, right? I've been playing pickleball for about 7, 8 months now. My brother got me into it, and I love it. We played in a tournament this past weekend
All right.
here in Texas, and I said I wanted another paddle. Like I wanted like a legit, like
Yeah.
like a Mercedes Benz paddle. And I had an idea of what I was looking for, but you know, trusting that someone, they weren't just going to sell me the most expensive paddle, but
Mhm.
they sold me a paddle that one, I got to try out. Two, they were telling me about, okay, well, not only this is kind of what you're already looking for, but look, this is something I think might fit you better. And it
Mhm.
wasn't the most expensive paddle. It was a quality paddle. And essentially, it was because I had this experience with this person.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel like he was trying to, he's like, oh, he wants this paddle, which the
Right.
original paddle I wanted was like almost $300. Um, but he took the time to go through the discovery process with me. And
Yeah.
so, you know, that's what I would say, man.
Mhm.
You got to ask questions,
Definitely.
be curious, learn about people. The more you learn about somebody in the selling industry, the more likely you are to sell them
Yep.
because you're getting to know them as a person. It's not just a transaction.
Exactly.
It's like you're their guy, you're their
Mhm.
person that they feel comfortable with. That if they wanted to have, if they're going out to have a drink on a Friday night or happy hour, they're like, hey, Jordan, we want you to come along.
Yep. Yep.
I don't really like to drink like that, but you know, yeah, I'm a guy's guy, so connect with people.
Yeah. No, yeah. I'm with you 100%. I think it's especially when you're selling stuff, like no one likes to just be like the used car salesman, just sold like buy this, and like be forced, right? Like no one likes that. But if you can make the connection with the person, as you're saying, that goes way further and will always go further than, buy this now and you're gonna like it. Like no one, that's just never gonna work. So I'm with you there, and that's beautifully put, as you stated there. And kind of before we end here, I always like to ask, and I'm always curious, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'm a big, kind of future guy, like thinking of where I want to be and then kind of work backwards. So I'm just curious, kind of where you see yourself in 5 years, or 10 years, or whatever the number you can choose.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of goes back to wearing these multiple hats, and I always see myself as a leader. I think that's what's made me a successful um, player,
Mhm.
coach. Um, you know, now being in the workforce is what made me successful. Is I see myself as a leader. Being able to help other people, share my experiences, how I'm doing this with you right now, being able to share, and I like to cut the learning curve down for people. I mean, if I went through something really rough and tough, but there's a better way, I want to be able to share that. So,
Yep.
to answer that question, um, I think it's broad in terms of where I'm going to be or but the biggest thing is I want to be happy.
Yep.
You know, um,
So it's all
I'm
about,
at this, yeah, that's what it's all about. But I see myself as having a full life. Like, I'm coming up in that time in my life where I see family in my future. I see marriage. I see, becoming a father, those things a part of my future. And so, you know, I'm looking for long-term stability and happiness.
yep.
That's that's what I'm after, and that's where I know I'll be. So, uh, a leadership position with happiness.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I love it. And I always like asking that because, I like to, in, 5 or so years, when we'll see where you end up in the leadership position and whatnot, circling back. And, I love seeing people kind of start, at the bottom, so to speak, and then kind of work the way up. I just think it's fun. And, when you have friends and coworkers and, people that start somewhere and grow, I think that's awesome to see. And, I'm happy for that. And, we wish you all the best. And thanks for joining us today. And, we're looking forward to getting this out to the listeners and viewers. So if you have any final words here, we'll wrap up here in the next minute or so. We'll just give you the floor. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to close this out, I would just tell people to one, be themselves. Um, don't feel like you have to be in a rush. Because I've been there in that space where, feeling like you have to be at a certain place and space in your life.
Mhm.
And all it does is that robs you of the present moment,
Yeah.
um, in which there's so much that's right there in front of you. And I think that this always goes back, and more so, I think this kind of goes back to what you asked me about the book. But
Mhm.
there's a book called Acres of Diamonds, and it's by the founder of Temple University, Russell Conwell. I encourage everyone to read that book, because it's not in a far off land. It's not somewhere else. It's right there where you are. And, cultivate meaningful relationships, love your people, um, and enjoy the moment, because you'll never get it back.
Yep, you're right. Beautifully put. And thanks for all the listeners today. And once again, Jordan, thanks for joining us. And you've listened to another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. And we'll see you guys later.